Good morning. Good morning. I would like to start with a story from 3 years ago. 3 years ago, VUGA was a much smaller company than it is now. We were only about 80 or so employees. That's a third of what we are now at 250. We had a tenth of the revenue. We were not nearly as profitable as now. And we were only on Facebook, whereas now all of our new games are mobile only. But I think that story is still relevant. Back then, we already have had 2 hits on Facebook that later became really big and did tens of millions of dollars of revenue in the following years. And we were working on some new projects, and one of these new projects was called Dream Cruise. And there was something new about that project because it was the first ever that we stopped during development. So the first time ever that we stopped a project before launch, halfway during development. And we did a lot of things wrong there. The fact that we stopped was right. I'm convinced that was the best decision because it would not have become a hit. But the way we stopped it really had fundamental effects on the next couple of years because we did so many things wrong. So what did we do wrong from stopping this project? So first of all, I made the decision. I think the team would have realized anyway within a couple of weeks that this was not going to be a hit, but I made the decision. I overruled the team, which had a really bad effect on team's motivation. Secondly, we didn't share learnings. So the team realized why this game would not become a hit, but the rest of the organization didn't really learn from it, and as a result, didn't get better from it. And for the team was really demotivating because they couldn't share their learnings with others inside the company. Everything they did was basically going to the trash right away. And thirdly, we created quite a bit of job insecurity for the team. Some people from that team had a new project right away inside VUGA, but others really were in a limbo state for a couple of weeks or even a couple of months. They did not have a new project to work on, created a lot of jobs insecurity, and also had a negative effect on everybody else, right? These people were friends with colleagues, and it had a negative effect on motivation of everybody else. And as a result, stopping became a taboo. Stopping a project became a taboo. And that is a big problem, because in this day and age, you need to stop your projects. Why is that the case? Let's look at the mobile games market. We have about 1,000 new games launching every single week. About 1,000 new games launch on the App Store, 1,000 new games launch on Google Play every single week. In total, we have maybe 100,000 games out there. And if you look at the revenue distribution, we made some estimates, and we believe it looks something like this chart. So you see there on the vertical axis, sales per day globally. And on the horizontal axis, you see the grossing rank, the top grossing rank, the global, right? You see there games doing over $2 million a day. And anything that's somewhere in the top 50 is basically so big that one game in the top 50, if you're able to sustain it there, that game alone can finance a 250 people company like VUGA. However, if you are outside of the top 1% of the App Store, right? The top 1% is somewhere place 100. If you're not there with your game, basically it doesn't matter. Maybe it's relevant for indie developers, but for professional developers, it doesn't matter. So you really need to focus only on these critical hits. These critical hits are so important because they can finance everything else in your company. And you need to filter all of the near misses. All of these games that are good, but not hits, you need to filter them because you don't have a chance on the market. So you need to make stopping normal, because if you take every project from the start of the project towards launch, you work on 2 little things, and you have projects that you know won't be hits, but you just continue doing them. So you need to make stopping normal. And for VUGA, 3 years ago, stopping was definitely not normal. And we had then something happening 18 months ago that changed that upside down for us. 18 months ago, early 2013, we were launching 5 games at about the same time, some of them on Facebook back then, still some of them on mobile. And out of these 5 games, 4 flopped. 4 of these 5 games flopped. And only 1 became a hit. That hit was called Pearl's Peril. It's a hidden object game. It's one of the biggest hidden object games in the world on mobile and on Facebook. Became huge, tens of millions of dollars of revenue per year. But the other 4 flopped. And we should have stopped them earlier. for some of these games, we kind of knew a year before launch, this is good, but not amazing. This won't become a hit. But because stopping was a taboo, we didn't stop them. And we realized we needed to change our approach. We needed to change the way we work. And we were coming from an approach where basically we were starting a project, and we were very careful about which project we started. But once we had started a project, we were going all the way through to launch. And that is something that we changed 18 months ago. Now we question projects regularly. Every couple of months, we ask ourselves, should we continue working on this game? And if the conclusion is, this is a good game, then we stop. Because it has to be great, it has to be amazing to continue. Otherwise, we stop. And the way it works is that we have hundreds of ideas. I think any good game company has hundreds of ideas. But in the past, we were looking at these hundreds and hundreds of ideas, making a very careful selection based on paper regarding which projects we start, and then moved all the way to launch. And now we have something that we call the hit filter. We do about 40 prototypes per year. And these prototypes are not one engineer does a quick prototype over the weekend. Those are fully playable games. It's a team of maybe 4 or 5 who works on a project for, let's say, 3 months, sometimes even longer, and it's fully playable. You have persistency, you can really fully play the game. There are no graphics or crappy graphics, but you can really experience the game. And then, out of those, we stop 3/4. Only 10 move forward to production, where we have real art and where we have production quality code. But even then, we continue to question regularly. Not every project then goes all the way through. Only about 7 of these go to soft launch. So we then soft launch in one market like Canada or Australia. We look at the numbers, and out of those 7, about 3 per year, rough estimate, see a global launch. And our goal is to have 2 hits per year. We had 2 hits last year with Jelly Splash and Pearl's Peril, and the goal is to have 2 hits per year. And this approach is what we call the hit filter. And that is quite different to how we worked 3 years ago. And now, on a slide, this looks simple, right? You just look at every project every couple of months, you decide if you continue or you stop. And I'm sure you can do that process once, and after that, your whole team is demotivated, everybody leaves, and nobody is willing to do a new project anymore, right? 3 years ago, stopping was a taboo. Now, stopping for us is normal. And to make stopping normal, for us at least, it has been key to make 3 things differently. It has been about making the decision, who makes the decision, how we make the decision. It has been about sharing the learnings, and it has been about ensuring a transition of the team members from one game to the other. And I would like to share one example with you, how we stop games now, and how we're doing it differently than we used to do it 3 years ago. I would like to show you a quick video of a game that we stopped just recently. It was halfway during development, a game by a small team designed for smartphones. And that game had a working title called Woobies. And let me show a quick video. Let's see if that works. So you see, you control this light source. If you hold down your finger, it moves up. And you go and you collect, and you go from light to light to light to collect it. You've got this ambient sound, you've got the graphics, and everybody who played this was amazed. Especially women were amazed by this game. They didn't want to give it back when we did user tests. They were really, really in love with it. But we stopped it. And why did we stop it? The key reason why we stopped it is really retention. Everybody who played that game initially was in love. Not everybody, but many people were in love with that. They were really, when we gave it to them, they were playing for a few days, and they were really enjoying it. But there was no vision how this game could be played for half a year or 2 years every day. And that is key. If you make a free-to-play game, you have to do it in such a way that it can be played over long periods of time, every day. And with this, there was no clear vision how that could have been achieved, how that could have stayed motivating. Therefore, we stopped it. And the decision to stop halfway during development, that was right. I'm convinced that was right. But the key question is, how do you keep the team motivated? And how do you keep this fact to make stopping normal? And this is a photo of the team. It was a very small team that worked on this. And they were really enthusiastic about that, very passionate, and how to keep them motivated. And It's about these three things, about making the decision. And that's really key. So when it comes to making the decision, what we do now is, for every game, we do a review meeting every month. With almost 20 games in development, right? Prototypes and games in production in parallel, almost 20 games in development. This is what a review meeting looks like. I'm in all of these review meetings, so I spend quite a bit of time in review meetings. But they're quite different like they are in other companies or like we did them before. Because these are not greenlighting meetings. Because I don't make the decision. And it's not a committee making the decision. The lead of the team, the product leads, has the last word, and she or he decides if we continue or not. And that is really essential, because what it does, it changes the whole meeting. It's not a sales meeting anymore, right? It's not the product lead selling his or her game and wanting to make sure that it's green-lighted, right? Because they can decide on their own. Everybody puts up their voice on the table and speaks very openly. And that has changed a lot because everybody on the table, all of the experts around the table really say what they like and don't like about it. And then the product lead has the last word. And just last week, I was overruled. I was in favor of stopping. The product lead decided to continue, and that's good. And that's good. Maybe I was wrong, and I will be convinced otherwise in the future, or the team will decide to stop in the future. And that is one of the things we do differently now than 3 years ago. The second is about sharing the learnings. And what we do there is, after stopping a game, we don't dissolve the team right away. They have 1 or 2 weeks to really get together and write down everything they learned, everything that worked really well, but also things that did not work so well and that they would do differently, and the reasons why the game was not a success. And then we give brown bag talks, or actually the team gives brown bag talks. So those are about half an hour, and anybody in the company can show up. You don't have to, but you can. And usually about 2/3 of the company show up. So we have over 150 people then attending these talks, very high show-up rate. And the team talks about everything they learned. And the most obvious benefit of that is things you do wrong in one game, you avoid doing the same mistake in another game. But the most overlooked benefit of that is that it keeps the team motivated. Because the team then knows what they did wasn't for the trash. What they did was something that is saved. It's kept for future teams to work on. And there was some reason, some benefit of working on their project. Their last half year of their life wasn't for the trash. It had some meaning. That was very important. And the third is ensuring transitions. So in that specific example, the team consisted of 6 people. And out of those 6, for 3, we had a new project right away, and they joined another project right away. But for 3, we hadn't. And that's normal, right? If you stop projects and start projects all the time, it will never be perfectly aligned in terms of timing. There will always be some people who have to wait a few weeks or maybe a couple of months for their next project to start. And what we do there is, first of all, there's a job guarantee. If we stop a project, we won't fire you. Obviously, we look at performance, but we look at performance during a project. And when we stop a project, there's a guarantee we won't end your contract. And the second, that is very important, is these people shouldn't sit idle and do nothing. They need to do something that helps them and that has a purpose. So we came up with the concept that we call lab time. And lab time is a limited amount of time where these people work on a project that has a benefit for VUGA, but also has a benefit for them. It can be something that they learn. For example, one of the artists who was great in characters and backgrounds learned about user interfaces and did some work there to get better. Or maybe an engineer who has worked on multiple projects, has written similar code in multiple projects, could turn that into a library that's reusable. Or a product manager could do a market analysis of a particular genre that we're about to enter. It's always something that helps VUGA and helps the person. And because of that, they are more motivated and they are not negatively influencing everybody else. So these are the 3 key things we now do differently than we used to do them 3 years ago. And as a result, stopping games is now normal. We stop games all the time. It's not a huge issue anymore. And what is really, really important, we have all of these near misses. And we have these games that are good but not great. And these near misses we stop and we filter. And that's important because they are the groundwork for the critical hits. Everything we learn there, the things the team learns are the groundwork for the critical hits. And we'd like to be very transparent about everything we do internally, but now we're also very transparent about what we do externally. Therefore, if you would like to know a little bit more about how we work, we've created a web page where we describe our development approach. And also on that page, we'll list about 10 projects we stopped in the last months. So if you go to vuga.com/hitfilter, you will see an overview of the way we work and the projects we have stopped. And by sharing that with you, we hope to get feedback and we hope to learn and improve and constantly get better at what we do. And overall, that has really helped us. Now, we're over 250 employees now. And over the years, we had 5 hits. So 5 games that each of them had tens of millions of dollars of revenue. And in contrast to 3 years ago, where stopping a game was a taboo, now stopping a game is normal. And due to that change that we have made, I believe it's possible, if you do that right, if you integrate it into your culture, to repeatedly create hits. Thank you. Does anybody have a question? We may have time for 1 or 2 questions. Here in the first row, we have a question.
Hi. What I would love to know is what role data plays in stopping or continuing a game.
Yeah, so the question was what role data plays in the continuing or stopping of a game. So it depends on the phases. If we have a game in soft launch, where we launch it in Canada, for example, then it's almost all data-driven. It depends on mostly retention, how we decide to stop. If it's in an earlier phase, like the example I showed with Vubies, halfway during development, there it's partly data. We let users play and we measure how much they recommended, their net promoter score maybe when they do a test play. But it's also really a deep analysis and these expert talks that we have. So when we get together in a review, we have experts from the company who have worked on games since a very, very long time. And they really analyze the game and they ask these questions about, okay, what would I do every day in half a year? What would I do every day in 1 year? Is there a good answer for that? And sometimes there are games that are fun when you do a test play, but it isn't clear how that could be fun in half a year. It's very obvious that this would become boring and there's no long-term vision for that core game loop. So it's a mix of data and basically expert discussions. There's a second question over there.
Can you speak about how you come out with ideas for the prototypes?
Yeah, so the question was how we come up with ideas for the prototypes. So actually ideas are pretty easy to get. If you have a creative atmosphere, we have people from over 40 nations in Berlin. It's very, very, very inspiring. What we do is we have a couple of genres that we focus on, that we believe in a lot, like hidden object games, for example, Match 3 and a few others. And we look into, okay, what are new developments in that field and how could we make more games in that area? But we also work on very wild ideas. So somebody may have a radical idea that nobody has ever done before. And in the end, it's really up to the lead of the team to decide. So we always start with the person, never with the idea. So we assemble the core team, the first 2 or 3 people, and they do a market research, they go through dozens of ideas, and then they decide what they prototype. It's not that we have the idea first, we have the people first. And with that, I fear it's the last question. I will come in a few minutes there to the lobby, and feel free to approach me. Thank you very much. Goodbye.